For most of human history, survival did not depend on specialized equipment, branded tools, or purpose-built gear. People endured ice ages, deserts, jungles, mountains, and long winters with little more than basic materials, hard-earned knowledge, and the ability to adapt. This isn't romanticism. It's a historical record written in bones, settlement patterns, and the quiet continuity of human presence in environments that modern advice insists require advanced gear. Understanding how humans survived extremes for 10,000 years means stripping away modern assumptions and looking at what actually kept people alive when replacement gear did not exist and rescue was impossible. Early humans did not survive because they owned the right tools. They survived because they understood systems, weather patterns, animal behavior, seasonal cycles, fire behavior, water movement, and human limits. Tools were simple because knowledge carried the real weight. A stone blade was not impressive by itself. What mattered was knowing how to resharpen it, how to use it efficiently, and how to replace it when it broke. Clothing was not specialized in the modern sense, but it was layered, adjustable, and repairable. Shelter was temporary, modular, and responsive to conditions rather than fixed and optimized for comfort. Survival worked because people knew how to adjust continuously instead of relying on equipment to hold the line. For most of human history, mobility was the primary survival strategy. People did not fortify against the environment, they moved with it. When cold intensified, they shifted patterns. When water disappeared, they followed it. When game moved, they adapted. Archaeological evidence shows repeated seasonal migration, even in extreme climates. This wasn't weakness, it was resilience. Fixed settlements failed when conditions changed. Mobile groups survived because they could abandon bad ground without losing their entire survival system. This is why heavy specialization was avoided. Tools needed to be portable, multi-purpose, and easily replaced. Skills needed to work anywhere. Fire was humanity's most important survival technology, not because it provided warmth, but because it enabled control. Fire allowed cooking, which increased caloric intake and reduced disease. It allowed drying clothing and tools. It allowed light without exposure. It allowed protection from predators and insects. Early humans didn't build complex shelters to withstand every condition. They built fire-smart spaces that worked in combination with movement and timing. A mediocre shelter with good fire management kept people alive longer than a strong shelter without it. This understanding persisted across cultures and climates. Fire knowledge was universal because it solved multiple survival problems at once. Ancient clothing was not about insulation in the modern sense. It was about regulation. Layers could be added or removed, materials breathed, wetness was managed, not eliminated. Fur, hides, woven fibers, and plant materials all shared one trait modern synthetic gear often lacks: repairability. A torn garment could be fixed immediately. A soaked layer could be dried. Nothing was disposable. People survived cold not by sealing themselves off, but by managing heat output, sweat, and airflow. Overheating was as dangerous as exposure. This balance was learned, not bought. Humans survived extremes by understanding energy, not by stockpiling calories. They timed effort. They minimized unnecessary movement. They rested strategically. They prioritized fats and proteins when available and adapted diets to seasonal scarcity. Foraging cultures understood that survival was about sustainability, not abundance. Overexertion killed more people than hunger. This is why effort management appears repeatedly in ethnographic records. People learned when not to work as carefully as when to work. One of the most overlooked survival tools in history was cooperation. Groups shared knowledge, labor, and risk. Specialized gear wasn't necessary when skills were distributed across the group. One person didn't need to know everything. They needed to know their role. This redundancy of knowledge allowed groups to survive loss, injury, and failure without collapsing. Isolation, not lack of gear, was the real killer in extreme environments. Complex systems fail. Early human survival systems were simple by necessity. Simple tools broke less often. Simple shelters could be rebuilt quickly. Simple routines adapted easily. This simplicity made survival scalable. Children learned it. Elders taught it. Knowledge passed through generations without dependence on materials that could disappear. When conditions changed, simplicity allowed rapid adjustment. The lesson of 10,000 years is not that modern gear is useless. It's that gear was never the foundation of survival. Knowledge, adaptability, and restraint were. Humans survived extremes by understanding their limits, respecting the environment, and refusing to overcomplicate survival. They didn't try to conquer nature. They learned how to exist within it. If you strip away modern conveniences, the core principles remain unchanged. Manage energy, control fire, regulate heat, stay mobile, share knowledge, adapt early. Those principles kept humans alive long before specialized gear existed, and they remain relevant because they are rooted in reality, not marketing. If you want more historically grounded survival insight that goes deeper than equipment lists and modern myths, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who thinks survival started with gear catalogs, and keep exploring the lessons humanity has already paid for.